One of my favorite book series of all time is The Hunger Games. I was actually forced to read it for my summer reading going into 9th grade back in 2010, and it was by far the best book I ever had to read for school. I couldn't put it down, and I read it in literally 2 days and wrote the best book report of my life. After that, I found out there was a second book called Catching Fire, and a third one on the way to wrap up the series. Once again, I read the second book in about 2 days, and eagerly awaited the third book. When it finally was released, I got it on that day, and read it in less than 8 hours, which is by far the fastest I've ever read a book. Since then, I've read the series about 3 more times, and I've seen the movie series at least 4 times. I'm a huge fan of both the books and the movies, and in this video, I'm going to discuss what makes these books appeal to me and so many others. Then I'll review the movie series and see how they compare to the books. Now obviously, since this is a dissection, there will be spoilers, so here's your warning. I'm going to split this video into 2 parts. In part 1, I'm going to talk about the dissection of the book and the first movie, The Hunger Games. Then in part 2, I'm going to review Catching Fire and Mockingjay part 1 and 2. Let's get started.
Happy Hunger Games! And may the odds be ever in your favor.
The series tells the story of a dystopian future where the US has been turned into a country called Panem, and it's divided into 12 districts, each with their own skill set that provides for the country. Each district are very underprivileged, some more than others, and are ruled by the capital, who are extremely fortunate and privileged people, and they're all under the control of the main villain, President Snow. Every year the capital picks 2 people from each district, 1 boy and 1 girl between the ages of 12 and 18, and put them in an arena where they fight to the death until there is only 1 victor. This is called the Hunger Games, which is penance for when the then 13 districts tried to overthrow the capital. Now 74 years later, we enter the 74th Hunger Games and follow the character Katniss Everdeen. I think one of the reasons the book has such an appeal to both myself and all of its fans is because author Suzanne Collins had so many parallels to our own society and what it could become. She also parallels history, and on top of that has deeper meanings behind so many things throughout all the books. Collins exaggerates humans' biggest flaws, both today and in our past, and translates them into the series. The most obvious parallel to history that I think everyone can make is the Roman Empire, with people being put in an arena and being forced to fight to the death. One of the things that the Roman Empire was probably most famous for. This mixes the 21st century and our own, with our constant need for entertainment and our obsession with reality TV shows. It combines our brutal and violent history with our unhealthy need to have technology at our fingertips at all times. If the Romans had the technology we have today, this might have been the result. With constant coverage of the event before, during, and after, it perfectly links our past and future and shows what we have the potential to become. Collins also uses the Hunger Games to show how violent our culture has become. It's of course not as exaggerated as killing 23 kids a year for our entertainment, but much of our entertainment today has killing and violence. Things like video games, movies, TV shows, and even some of our sports can be pretty brutal. Also, it's so common for kids today to have toy guns and swords and other types of weapons. There's actually a great scene in the first film where Hamish is watching kids from the Capitol playing with a toy sword while the games are going on, showing how both the Capitol and our own society has become so desensitized to violence. Body image is another thing that Collins references in this trilogy. The people in the Capitol are obsessed with body modifications, such as skin dyeing, implants, tattoos, and other bizarre modifications, all things that we have today. Once again, Collins just exaggerates it. Collins also touches on the feminist movement by actually not touching on it. And what I mean by that is there are no gender roles in this story. Women have every opportunity and every ability to do what men do, and no one questions it. No one even remotely thinks or acts in a way that would suggest any bias toward men or women. The main hero of the story is a woman who has more athleticism, heroism, and hunting and fighting abilities than most. It goes to the point that had Katniss been a boy, the basic storyline wouldn't have been that different. Obviously, there are some things that make her feminine, such as the outfit Cinna makes her, but it's never to a point where it's degrading or playing down the role of women. This was something I found very interesting and very appealing to this book series, because it's so different from so many other stories that tell of a male hero who have to save the damsel in distress. I also love the way Collins approached Katniss. She's a hero without trying to be. The thing that makes Katniss a hero is just her being herself. She's a hero because of the way she treats people and the way she acts, and on top of that, the values that she holds.
Think of one incident where Katniss Everdeen genuinely moved you.
No one told her what to do.
She wasn't a hero because she was the best warrior, or because she accomplished the most. She's a hero because of things like the way she treated Rue, and gave her a beautiful and meaningful goodbye. She's a hero because she protects the people she loves, no matter what that means for her own well-being, like when she volunteered to take her sister's place in the first games.
I volunteer! I volunteer! I volunteer as tribute!
She's a hero just by being herself. And that's not to say that she isn't an incredible warrior and doesn't kick ass on the battlefield, because she does. But the thing that makes Katniss special and different from other heroes in other stories is the fact that her heroism comes from her heart and not her muscles. It shows how powerful just one voice can be. The books also explore alcoholism and drug addiction, with Haymitch being an alcoholic, along with Joanna being addicted to painkillers. Both suffered tremendous loss, Haymitch losing everyone he loves, and Joanna being tortured for months by the Capitol. These are real-life issues, and by putting them in the books, it makes the story feel more real, and makes the world that Collins created more believable. Politics and government also play a huge role in the series. They are the obvious bases of every corrupt government or dictatorship, no matter what time period you're in. And these include the destructive force of humans, the unjust social hierarchy, and the danger of abusive and higher powers. This is obvious with Snow, and is needed to control through fear and intimidation.
To those who ignore the warnings of history, prepare to pay the ultimate price.
He gives the people of Panem a distraction through the Hunger Games.
Your job is to be a distraction, so people forget what the real problems are.
This element of distraction is very common in the Roman Empire. Snow knows that the system is fragile, because each district relies on the other to survive.
It must be a fragile system if it can be brought down by just a few berries.
Yes, it is indeed.
His brutality with things like making people avoxes, meaning he cuts people's tongues out, is another quality we see in some of the most ruthless dictators, like Hitler branding his prisoners with a number. Those are things we see time and time again throughout history, dating all the way back to the Romans, and even as recently as today. In the books, Collins doesn't focus on a specific government that our heroes are aiming to reach, but she does comment on our own current government and the flaws that we have as a society. There's one passage in the book that I find very interesting that goes as follows. We're going to form a republic where the people of each district and the capital can elect their own representatives to be their own voice in a centralized government. Don't look so suspicious. It worked before. In books. In history books. And if our ancestors could do it, then we can too. Frankly, our ancestors don't seem much to brag about. I mean, look at the state they left us in. With the wars and the broken planet, clearly they didn't care about what would happen to the people who came after them. This is so interesting to me because she's talking about us. We are the ancestors. She ties us into the conflict, making us the problem, and shows that we are the reason why the world is the way it is, making the book seem so much more real and so much more plausible. She's commenting on our current state with our lack of initiative to fix our planet, the wars we're fighting, and how we don't think about the future. Obviously it's very exaggerated, but it still sends a message to readers that we need to change what we're doing, and I admire Collins for sending that message. The series also is based on World War II propaganda, which was a big part of that war, but once again Collins links the past and the present beautifully by making the propaganda messages similar to the ones in World War I, but blends our common use of technology to make this propaganda. She also touches on something that is a real fear today, which is nuclear bombing. District 13's job was to make nuclear bombs, and it seems poetic that the thing that destroyed them was their own creation. The bombing on 13 also parallels that of the Hiroshima and Nagasaki bombings in 1945 that subsequently ended the war in Europe after Nazi Germany responded to this by signing a surrender. Just like those bombings that ended World War II, the bombing on 13 ended the war of the first uprising. Now we head to the present in the Hunger Games, 75 years since the bombing, very close to our present since the World War II bombing, 65 years. In the future, both sides have and are creating bombs, and there's the same fear that we have today.
Yeah, we could have bombed the Capitol, but they would have retaliated with at least twice the firepower. Then what? There would have been nobody left to claim victory.
It's the fear of nuclear war, but once again, the book shows what we could become when the Capitol bombs District 12, destroying everything and everyone, a real fear with people today. Collins made all the names in the series have deeper meanings and origins. For example, Katniss is also the name of a plant that is known to have nourishing roots, nourishment being a very big quality in her character, especially when it comes to her little sister Prim. The Katniss plant also has leaves shaped like arrowheads, a bow and arrow being the weapon of choice for Katniss. Pita is a play on pita bread because his family owns a bakery. Effie is short for the Greek name Euphemia, which means well-spoken, something very fitting to her character that is always worrying about being proper and having manners.
How about it's just bad manners, sinner? Attitude. Manners.
Seneca Crane was the name of a Greek philosopher forced to commit suicide, making his name actually foreshadow his fate. For Coriolanus Snow, Coriolanus was the name of Shakespeare's play that centered around supporting the power of aristocrats over the common people, something very much in Snow's belief system, with the capital and the districts. While the capital drinks concoctions to make themselves sick so they can eat more, the districts are starving.
People are starving in 12. Here they're just throwing it out to stuff more in.
Which sort of plays on the problem of eating disorders in our society today, specifically bulimia. Hunger is something in history that sparks revolutions, most notably the French Revolution, when the rebelling started due to their king letting them starve. The series title also has the metaphorical meaning for hunger, because the districts are hungry for freedom. The symbol of the series is the Mockingjay, and it means so much more to the series than just the logo. The Mockingjays were created through the Capitol's failure when they created jabberjays, birds that could repeat any phrase they hear. The Capitol used them to spy on the rebels during the first rebellion, but the rebels caught on and started feeding them misinformation, so the Capitol decided to scrap the project and just release them all. The jabberjays then mated with mockingbirds to make Mockingjays. They symbolize a failure from the Capitol, and as Katniss described it, it was something of a slap in the face for the Capitol. But Mockingjays come to mean so much more when Madge gives Katniss the Mockingjay pin, and she wears it in the first games. People start to see the connection that the Mockingjay is a sign of resistance, and eventually that becomes the base of the rebellion. And eventually Katniss, the face of the revolution, becomes the Mockingjay.
This is the revolution, and you are the Mockingjay.
The Capitol created the Mockingjay, just as the Capitol created Katniss as the face of the revolution, by putting her in the games in the first place. Both things they didn't mean to make, and both things backfiring on them, made through their own poor choices and failures. Both of those failures formed together to create both the symbol and the person of the rebellion that will ultimately bring them to their knees. Breaking these books down, it's easy to see why they have such a strong appeal to fans, and why they have such a strong fan base. That fan base begged for a movie, and in 2012, that wish finally came true. When it was first announced that Jennifer Lawrence would be playing Katniss, I got pretty excited, because I loved her in X-Men First Class that came out a year before this. She wasn't as well known then, but looking at her career today, it's clear that she is a phenomenal actress, and was the perfect choice for Katniss. They chose Josh Hutcherson as Peeta, Liam Hemsworth as Gale, Woody Harrelson as Haymitch, Elizabeth Banks as Effie, and many others. The list goes on with all the tributes, and pretty much everyone gave a phenomenal performance. Josh and Jen have amazing chemistry both on and off camera.
Don't even play
He
that
is
game
so
with me.
sweet
I'm
and charming.
Yes, I'm very
and
charming. I'm
adorable.
extremely
Oh,
charming.
and
I'm aware
funny,
of that. I'm
and you're
hilarious.
smart.
I'm very smart.
And that's definitely clear in the scenes that they share together throughout the whole series. Gary Ross was chosen as the director, who didn't have a lot under his belt at the time, but I think he did a pretty good job. He made a few interesting decisions and had a very unique style. Now, was that good? In some cases, yes, and in some cases, no. A technique that I think he way overused is the shaky cam. Now, this can be a very useful technique and can be very effective. The prime example that actually made this technique mainstream by Steven Spielberg was in the film Saving Private Ryan. In its opening battle, it shows the chaos and unpredictability of war. It adds so much to the sequence and makes it a better scene. In the Hunger Games, this is not the case. It doesn't add anything to the film. All it does is make it hard to tell what's actually going on. Instead of enhancing the scene the way it does in Saving Private Ryan, it actually hurts the scene. I think a big part of them doing this was to cover up the violence so that the film would remain at a PG-13 rating, meaning more people will go to see it and therefore more money. Now, how does the film adapt the book? It does a pretty good job and is pretty faithful to the source material. They bring District 12, the Capitol, and the arena to life so well, and they're all pretty much exactly how I pictured them in the books. The characters were fleshed out really well. Katniss, Peeta, and Gale were exactly how I imagined them in the books. One of my favorite characters from the books was Cinna, and I loved Lenny Kravitz's portrayal of him.
I'm sorry that this happened to you, and I'm here to help you in any way that I can.
Most people just congratulate me.
Well, I don't see the point in that.
The actor that steals the show, however, is Donald Sutherland as President Snow. He understands his character so well, probably better than anyone in the series.
I have a huge attraction for Coriolanus Snow. I have affection for him.
He also understands the books and where the ideas come from, and Sutherland is just as brilliant as Snow. All the interviews with Sutherland show just how knowledgeable he is.
He's the representative of an oligarchy of the privileged, and he's a politician, but a very skillful one. And he's able to balance everything. Sometimes he has to kill people, but that's, certainly Lyndon Johnson. How many did he kill? At the moment, look at what we're doing with our drones. So it's not that exceptional. I mean, if you look at where this would be going, I mean, if you have the poor and the impoverished, the hungry, eventually they're going to find a way to revolt. You have to look at what happened in Egypt, what happened in Libya, what's happening right now in Syria. And in front of all of this is Coriolanus Snow.
His knowledge of the character is incredible, and that's clear in every scene he's in. One addition to the many characters that I feel I have to mention is Seneca Crane the Game Maker, who was not in the book other than a brief mention. His role is expanded on a lot, which I actually think adds a lot to the story. Not only do we get to see his demise and make it mean more than it did in the books, but it also allows for more President Snow scenes.
Hope.
Hope.
It is the only thing stronger than fear.
I also love how they show the behind the scenes of the Game Maker and his crew, and we see how they control and move the players.
Can you give me a tree right there?
Sure.
I think that the behind the scenes edition was great, but there are some moments once again where it's overused to the point where it actually hurts the film. When Katniss is getting fire thrown at her, it continually takes you away from the action to go to the Game Makers, making all of the suspense they built up go away, and then they have to rebuild it, or they just jump back in as if they didn't cut to the Game Makers, and it just doesn't work. Some cutscenes from the games that I actually liked was getting to see the riots in District 11 after Rue's death. It shows the beginning of the districts defying the capital, and we see how Katniss is already inspiring people to fight back, something that is very important to the overall story. It adds a lot to the overall uprising in the series, and adds more to how powerful and influenced Katniss is. Now, some things I was disappointed that they cut out from the book. The Avox girl, who Katniss saw get taken by the Capitol years before, who then serves her before the games. I thought it showed the ruthlessness of the Capitol and was quite shocking and disturbing. The weird thing is that they actually cast her, and she's present in a lot of the scenes, but only in the background. What's the point? Another change that they made that I didn't really like was the finale, when they get attacked by the creatures. They made them just normal mutts, but in the books, they were actually the dead tributes turned into these monstrosities. Again, it showed the ruthlessness of the Capitol. It could have made for a very shocking scene. They would have meant way more. It also would have tied Peeta's line of,
I just keep wishing I could think of a way to show them that they don't own me. If I'm gonna die, I want to still be me.
That line is also a great foreshadowing for Mockingjay, which is very cool. But the thing I was most disappointed that they cut out was the explanation behind the Mockingjay. That's one of the best parts of the series, as I mentioned earlier, and it means so much to the overall story and deeper meanings. So that was pretty disappointing that they couldn't make time for that. One thing that bugs me is the CGI for the fire during the parade. It was horrendous, and not up to the standards that a big budget film like this should have. Now, some highlights of the film. The scene when Katniss volunteers for Prim is so powerful to me and literally gave me chills. Then when they give her the three-finger salute, it's just magnificent. The editing in this film is very original and interesting, especially the sound editing. This is clear when the timer goes off. Also, the scene with the explosion had amazing sound editing. I just wish that they could have made it have a longer lasting effect, rather than just going away after a minute, because in the books, Katniss actually went deaf in one ear for that. They also cut out Peeta's leg having to be chopped off. Both of these things would have showed the lasting ramifications of the games. One thing that didn't really come across in this film that was a big part of the book was the fact that Katniss was only putting on an act when she was in love with Peeta so that they could get sponsors and ultimately stay alive. This is important because it affects Katniss and Peeta's relationship, because Peeta really is in love with her, and when he finds out that she was just acting, he's devastated.
It was nice acting.
You too.
Almost thought that kiss was real.
It was a huge part of the book, and makes it more satisfying when Katniss starts to feel the same way that Peeta does later on in the series. But in the first movie, it's not really clear that she was just acting, especially if you haven't read the books. There were a couple clues like when they were on the train back.
So what happens when we get back?
I guess we try to forget.
I don't want to forget.
But other than that, it's pretty unclear. Because of this confusion, they clear it up in Catching Fire, with a few scenes.
Hale, it was an act.
Yeah, it's a good one.
I did what I had to do to survive.
But for 2 years, the time between the two films, many people completely misunderstood Katniss and Peeta's relationship. Overall, the film was a solid introduction to the series. It introduced us to the characters and the world, and made us crave more from the girl on fire. Thanks for watching part 1. If you want to see part 2, click right here. I'm going to review Catching Fire and Mockingjay part 1 and 2 and give you my final thoughts on the series.